welcome to this episode of Fuel Talk from Cox Automotive UK. For those of you that haven't tuned in before, Fuel Talk is a straight talking podcast. We share valuable context around our news, expertise and group businesses in Cox Automotive UK. So I'm James Davis, and for this episode, we'll be focusing on the reopening of dealerships and more specifically showrooms. And I'm delighted to be joined by James Leese, Chief Customer Officer of Cox Automotive Europe, and by Philip Nothard, who's Insight and Strategy Director for Cox Automotive International. So welcome, gents.
Morning, James.
So we're recording this episode sandwiched between the moment yesterday when showrooms reopened in Scotland or could reopen in Scotland and the forthcoming reopenings in England and Wales. And I guess coming to both of you, but James, first of all for you, there's been a lot of hype and build up and anticipation for this moment. What sentiment are you hearing from our customers?
So yeah, there's a lot of, as you say, excitement about the 12th of April for many reasons. We can go and get our hair cut as well, which would be good. But for our customers and for those dealers being able to open, obviously, their sites to allow people to come in, test drive vehicles, buy vehicles, that face-to-face opportunity that the sales teams are looking for. So a lot of excitement. What we're hearing from the customers right now, those dealers, is that, interesting enough, I mean, you think about the lockdown period they've been through, they've obviously still been able to operate. So they've still been operating click and collect. And most of our customers tell us that that's been anywhere between 50 and 60, sometimes up into the 70% of what they would have normally been selling traditionally. They've been able to still complete those transactions via click and collect and online only. So it's not as if they've sort of been shut down and they're expecting this massive bow wave of business to to come to them. But saying that, they are starting to see an uplift in inquiries through the websites, more people excited to come in and see them and visit those sites. So the initial sentiment we're getting back is that they are expecting, I suppose, a little bit of an increase in sales activity. But I think there is still a question mark that says, to what level do we expect that to rise? So again, I said, because it's not going from a nothing to completely opening again and opening the doors. They have been trading. They've been trading and doing very well in the current challenges they faced. So I think that it's a bit of a sort of unsure, really. What the market's telling us, we're going to see that increase of customers visiting dealerships. Customers are starting to see an increase in activity online, but actually not as if it's suddenly going to just see this bow wave of customers enter into their sites. So I think it's a bit of anticipation at the moment, sat there waiting to see what will happen come the 12th. But one thing I would say, it's great to be in that position. It's great for the market to get back to a point where we can get customers back into the dealerships. That's only good for our customers' business. It's good for our business. It's good for the economy. So we're really excited about that, and obviously ready to support our customers as and when that's needed. But at the moment, I think it's still a little bit of an unknown exactly what impact that is going to have into the marketplace.
Yeah. And so coming to you then, Phil, in terms of what you're hearing in the industry, I mean, James, you touched on the point there that the third lockdown was very different to that first lockdown, where, as you said, everything was closed. Is similar things, Phil, are you finding and hearing?
Yeah, I think, we've got to remember that the first lockdown, it was a strict lockdown. It was a abrupt stop on the 23rd of March. We've just gone through that anniversary. And, as James has pointed out, there has been activity through the second and the third lockdown, so we did see, you look back to that first lockdown when the showrooms reopened from the 1st of June, and, it was just a flood then, wasn't it? Because everything had been shut down fully, from a wholesale, logistics, retail perspective. The whole industry had shut down. So, there is an anticipation we'll start to see some of this recovery. I think one thing is clear that throughout that first lockdown, some of the retailers weren't in a e-commerce and a digital proposition clearly at that first one, which they did then start to position and put in place. So there's some good learnings, and it, that first lockdown did create some significant investment and growth in that e-commerce digital retailing sector. So, and the dealers have benefited from that since reopening and throughout the remainder of 2020 and into 2021. And as James has pointed out, there is activity out there in the market through the third lockdown, albeit not to 100% of where the retail sector would normally see it, but at least there is activity, which is positive. You can look at it that the market is either 30% down or actually we're performing at 70% of normal activity, which is great. And we've had the March results out now. We're 11.5% up on the year for March 2021 versus 2020 last year. So it's 283,000 new car registrations versus 254,000 last year. So an increase of 29,000 registrations on the year. We need to put that in context. That's still 174,000 down from what we saw in 2019. So we are still behind a normal quarter for the sector. But there is a positive with that. There is activity that does generate product. It does generate part exchanges. It does generate fleet models, fleet vehicles to come back into the sector, which is all good news for us as a business and the retail sector for product.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the one takeaway from that, as you say, whilst registrations are up year on year, what's happening in terms, clearly supply has been impacted because, we talked in a recent Fuel Talk around some of the pressures on the new car market at the moment, like the semiconductor chip shortage, but clearly also there's, as you touched on, that logistics supply chain working to COVID compliant practices, so factory output is lower. So what generally, showrooms are opening, great, as you say, great news. What's going to happen with supply? Because that clearly there's some underlying used supply issues as well as new.
Yeah, we can't ignore the fact that throughout 2020, since March to the end of December, we lost just over 1.1 million new used car transactions. Between March of last year and March of this year, we've lost just over 723,000 new car registrations. So there is lost volume in both the new and used car market. So, nearly 750,000 new cars that haven't happened, and they won't recover. They won't happen now. They've gone. Those vehicles will not come into the used car market. So, used vehicle supply throughout 2021, we do expect to be, constrained. There is going to be a potential shortage of product overall. But, again, that's where the retailers and the wholesalers need to work together in terms of finding this product, the right product, and getting that product onto the forecourts ready for the retail market.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's no coincidence that we're recording this Fuel Talk when we are, because obviously there's a lot of interest and questions from our customers and the industry in terms of what our thoughts are about how the market's going to roll out in the next coming weeks and months. Phil, it's worth touching on for the audience that the massive amount of insight that you produce and are responsible for producing and sharing, in terms of what is coming down the track to help our customers and the industry, be really cognizant of those pressures and what that's going to mean for the market. Could you just give us an overview of what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, we do a mid-month temperature check, so that's rather than wait until the month is finished. Let the sector know what's happening throughout the month, give them a sort of a view of the wholesale and retail market partway through the month, so they can sort of see where the month is starting to head. We also have launching this week, we're doing a recovery radar, so that's publishing the cap performance, average price through our wholesale business and the first-time conversion. So that'll give the sector a sort of a view of recovery. Because, since Boris announced the reopening of the sector on the 5th in Scotland, subsequently from the 12th of April onwards, we saw that activity start to return where retailers needed to try and get product, replace product that they needed for the forecourts and get it in. So, it's a case of showing that to the market. And then the biggest next thing is really the Auto Focus, which is a new quarterly report that we're publishing, which is due to be launched on the 12th of April as the dealers reopen again. And that's really looking back at the first quarter of the year, but more significantly looking forward at the next quarter. So that's where we'll put some forecasts around the new and used car volumes, why we're forecasting those figures, and look at some of the other trends within the industry, from M&A activity, dealer sentiment, and more importantly, what's happening in the electric vehicle market.
Well, fantastic, and certainly a must read, and keeping your finger on the pulse of all of that. It's going to be a fast-moving market, isn't it? And I guess coming to you then, James, other than the insight, which Phil's quite clearly outlined there, how else is Cox Automotive continuing and stepping up support in terms of customers through this time?
So obviously the beginning of this, the pandemic, when we faced this time last year, crazy to think we're saying that a year ago, but when we faced this, to support our customers, obviously we launched our Accelerate program through Mannheim. So specifically for those buyers, to make sure that we're supporting them. So obviously we continued, after the first shutdown, we then started selling online, which we've continued to do through the whole of this period. We will continue to focus on that, continuing to focus and develop how we support them as best we can. So with our Accelerate program, obviously we stopped online fees, we continue to do that. We also supported them through imagery. So knowing the fact that actually when you buy cars in wholesale, you want to try and retail them as quickly as possible. So giving them access to those free images that we produce from a wholesale perspective to support them retailing cars quicker. There are various other elements in that Accelerate program which we will continue to review over the next few months, because let's be honest, we're opening on the 12th of April from a perspective of the dealerships opening, non-central retail, but we know from an auction perspective that we continue focusing on how we support our customers digitally, because who knows what's around the corner. From a next gear capital perspective, obviously they continue to support dealers with that funding. So making sure we're flexible on how we support them in these challenging conditions as well. So everything we can continue to do around making sure they can continue to operate their business profitably, and we're supporting them as we can in all of those elements, whether that's funding, whether it's sourcing of stock. Digital retailing been a huge focus area for us as well in the last 12 months. That continues. Obviously, our recent acquisition of Code Weavers, again, demonstrates our support and how we want to support our customers with that whole digital retailing proposition as well. So lots of activity continues to happen, and we're here to support our customers through what will hopefully be the loosening of some of these restrictions over the next 3 or 4 months to get back to some normality. But again, who knows what the future holds with some of these things. So it's important that we remain flexible to support our customers as deemed appropriate at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the outset, obviously with the safety, the health and safety of not just colleagues, team members, but customers at the forefront of that. So specifically, and James, it's worth touching on as we record this, what's the latest thinking around Mannheim specifically in the reopening of physical auctions? Because again, in the industry, there's been a lot of headlines and focus on that. So what's the position of Mannheim?
Absolutely. So from a Mannheim perspective, as we've always said, the health and safety of our employees, our customers is paramount, and that will always continue to be the case. We've been consistent with that since day one. So from that perspective, we don't deem it's appropriate to open physical auctions right now. Obviously the restrictions released, but how you manage to get a certain amount of people into an auction hall safely and securely, I don't know how you manage to do that. That's why we've taken the approach that says for the foreseeable future, we won't be looking to reopen our physical auction sites, the physical sales. So said, we will continue to support through simulcast and those activities. We will be allowing customers on site from the 12th through booking, as they did in the second wave of COVID. So that allows the buyers to come on site if they want to view vehicles. It allows some of our vendors to come onto site as well. But we won't be opening up our physical lanes. That's not to say we won't be opening them up ever again, because we do believe that there is a place for physical auctions without a shadow of a doubt. But we're just going to monitor the situation, review that and see where we are come June. Given the lift of the wider restrictions, hopefully we'll see mid-June, mid to late June. But we continue to just always monitor that, do the right thing for our people, our customers. Again, paramount is safety and security of our team members and our customers. But at the same time, we know that if some of our customers want to start getting back to physical auction, then we need to look at that. But we'll do it when it's appropriate and safe for everyone to do that.
That's great. No, thank you for clarifying that. And it's worth saying for anyone tuned into the audience, both Phil's insight and the great work that's produced in that area, plus also the COVID-19 updates, are all available on our website, which is www.coxauto.co.uk. Phil's insight can be found under the Content Hub section, as well as there's latest news on that website as well. So as well as the COVID information, we'll keep all of that updated for our valued customers to be able to reference. So gents, that's great. Yet again, the time has flown by, as it always does when we get together. So thank you both for your valuable time. And to our audience, we hope you found it beneficial and interesting and valuable. And if so, please help others find it by giving us the thumbs up and a like. As ever, if there's anything you'd like us to focus on in a future episode of Fuel Talk, please just send a message through our social media platforms and we'd be delighted to look at that. So thank you for tuning into Fuel Talk today and stay safe.